Hello and welcome to today's meeting of the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee. So first on the agenda is the membership of committee. I've had apologies from Councillor Paula Davis and I don't believe they're sending a sub. Lee, have you got anything else on that?
I've not received any further apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any interests that they'd like to declare? No. Minutes of the previous meeting. Is anything that anyone wants to raise on that? I haven't had anything in advance of it. Excellent, thank you very much. Just a reminder that this meeting's being taken in public and is being live streamed and recorded. I don't believe we've got any deputations or petitions or public questions, have we, Lee?
No, none received. Excellent.
So that brings us on to item number 7, which is the annual report on bad debt write-offs 2019-20, which I believe is being presented by Steve Bird today. Steve.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all see me? I can't see myself on the screen. Yeah, but I'm on, am I? Good. I'm Steve Bird, Head of Welfare and Exchequer Services. And I'm here to present the annual write-off report on behalf of the Chief Finance Officer to the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee. I hope you've all had a chance to read the report. It contains a summary of the Council's approach to recovery and write-off. In terms of overall numbers, in 2019-20, we've written off £5.74 million, or 1.16% of the overall debt that's been raised. That's not just in relation to 2019-20, it's for all years, including previous years to that. For comparison, the previous year, 2018-19, we wrote off £5.9 million, which was equivalent to approximately 1.24% of the debt raised during that financial year. And that sort of has continued the trend for the last 4 or 5 years in a downward cycle. So we've written off less than we were writing off 4 or 5 years ago. However, due to the current climate for COVID-19 and the downturn in the economy, we're not expecting that trend to continue in future years. The basic detail of the report is mainly contained in Appendix A. There's a schedule in Appendix A for the write-offs, and there are 2 tables. One shows the write-off by type and organisation, and the second table shows a bit more detail in terms of the analysis and the reason why the write-off was done. Both tables show a comparison to the previous year, 2018-19, but that's really for illustration purposes only. It's only 2019-20 that we're looking at today. That's basically, it's relatively straightforward. Hopefully the report is a similar format to the previous ones for last year.
Thank you very much, Steve. Before I hand over to John, because I see that John's indicated, I'll just mention that I spoke to that Steve stepped in for Mark. I spoke to Mark earlier in the month about this report, and we discussed how the team are going to be trying to make sure they're supporting people on this, because obviously it's going to get a lot more difficult, as Steve outlined, in the upcoming year, and we're not expecting to have such a good report as we have had this year in terms of the amount that we're writing off. So Mark is going to be coming back to us as a committee in the coming months, just to update us on the progress that they make and the steps that they're taking to support people going forward on this. John, have you got a question?
It's more comments than question. Firstly, I'd just like to take the opportunity, Steve, to thank you and the team on the work that you have done, because I think you're right. It is another good performance, and we're not seeing vast amounts of write-offs. And I take the point about COVID and the impact that they may have over the next period, however long that lasts. My only other comment, I don't know whether this report goes anywhere else, but paragraph 2.6 doesn't actually make sense. It looks like somebody's written it and then they've altered it. And actually, I get apologies, Steve, because I'm a bit like this. I do tend to read things and I pick up were it says the HRA write-off figure of 0.46 million includes approximately former tenant liable costs.
Oh yeah.
Also referred to as. So some words have obviously been altered and taken out, but somebody's not reread it. And my advice for anything you bring to this committee, if I'm sat on it, is read it end to end before you submit it, because I will pick them up. But really, it's a good news story, and and I would ask you to pass on, and I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody, our thanks to all of your team for the work that they do. And that's it, really, Will.
I'll correct the text.
Thanks, John. And yeah, he's absolutely right, Steve. If you're going to come to this committee and John's on it, you better make sure there's no typos.
No, it's a fair comment.
He will catch you out.
Picked up, so apologies for that.
Councillor Lee Richards.
Hi, good morning. Yes, well done on an excellent report. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions on the HRA and the bad debts there, because I read the paragraph 2.8 that you robustly pursue bad debts wherever you can. I just wondered, could you tell me how many tenants, it might be something you email me later, but how many tenants and former tenants have bad debts above £10,000?
Okay, I'll have to come back to you on that. I don't have that to hand. I'll need to check with colleagues in K&H, but I can come back to you.
Brilliant. And also, how many of those would be in the, in the town centre, in Huddersfield town centre?
Okay.
So that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lee Richards. John, your hand's still up. Is that from the last one, or have you got another? No. Excellent. Any other comments or questions from any other members? Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, thanks, Will. I put mine in the chat column. Different committees working.
Sorry.
No sweat. Just picking up on a couple of points that colleagues have raised. John had quite rightly said, I don't know where this is going next, because we're asked to note this. Presumably at some place, these figures will have to be formally written off. Is that a cabinet function? Because we haven't got a cabinet member with us today to answer any of those questions, because presumably they get these reports on a regular basis. And picking up on Sue's point, could we have awards split rather than how many of those is Huddersfield Town Centre? Obviously, it'd be interesting to if the bad debts were able to be identified by wards. Yeah, and is there a trend in that situation that do particular areas have recurring bad debt problems?
The only issue, I'll take the second question first, if I could, in terms of the wards. It's very difficult to produce information in wards, unfortunately, on the Northgate systems and also across many of the other IT systems, because they're not, unfortunately, geared up or set up in wards. So all our reporting mechanisms, certainly for council tax, business rates and sundry debt, are not set up in that way. So it would be very difficult for us to analyse that or draw any comparison with previous years based on wards. We tend to use parishes, the old historic parishes. So we really struggle with wards, unfortunately.
If I could have the parish of Murfield, then Will.
Yeah, we can do Murfield. We can do parishes, but like I say, we don't tend to do comparisons across different parishes. It tends to be more at a global level. But
I didn't know you were a Murfield councillor, Martin. You don't mention it much. Is Julia, I believe you're at the meeting. Would you be able to just clarify with regard to Martin's first question, please?
Yes, I can do that, if that would help. I suspect that Steve was probably going on to sort of explain that as well. But if you note in the section dealing with finance in 3.6, talks about the amount of debt written off each year is factored into the council's overall budget, and appropriate provision is made to account for uncollectible debts raised. So it will feature in a further report. It needs to come here. It's one of the tasks of the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee to receive this report, and then it will be factored into the budget. I think that's correct, isn't it, Steve? I'm sure.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Martin, did you want to come back in on that?
Yeah, I'm confused because obviously the budget takes place in February. I seem to recall historically that Cabinet agreed to write off debts, unrecoverable debts and things. The budget process sets the money for the future. Bad debts is retrospective. Surely a decision-making body somewhere should have to agree that those debts are now unrecoverable.
Eamon, are you coming in on this?
Yeah, Eamon.
Hi, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to come in on this. So I'd raise my hand virtually. Financial procedure rules are set out explicit that this is actually the process for writing debts off is an officer delegated decision, and it's reported to Corporate Governance and Audit Committee as a matter of course. And corporate governance, one of the roles of key role of Corporate Governance and Audit Committee is around the assurance process for the officer delegation and the process for writing the debts off, and how and under what circumstances or what criteria are used. And as you mentioned earlier, from time to time, for example, Mark's been going to report back later in the year to articulate to Corporate Governance and Audit Committee what the process is going to be through the current COVID situation in terms of how we, sensitively handle recovery procedures given the household circumstances of some of our most vulnerable clients. But it is an officer delegated decision, and it is coming here to report as set out in financial procedure rules. It's not a cabinet decision, formal cabinet decision to write off.
Thank you very much, Eamon. Sue and John have their hands up, I believe. And I think they're back up again. It's not just that they're still up. So I'll go to John first, if that's okay.
Yeah, just a quickie. I'm not sure. Asking the team to spend time breaking down the write-offs to a ward level is really a sensible use of officer time. I think that there's better uses for that time. Now, if it's freely available on parish level, if you want to provide that to me, I feel fine, but I wouldn't want you to be taking away the message that all of us think we need this information at ward level, because I'm not sure what you would do with it even if we had it, because it's not going to change anything. And I think the team are doing their job and we should leave them to get on with it. Personally, that's just a personal view.
Okay, thank you, John. Councillor Lee Richards.
I was just interested in tenants and former tenants with a high level of debt, really, and just in case there are some slipping through the net. Obviously there may be lots of people in small arrears, but do we have one or two offenders who regularly get away with it, really?
I'll need to come back to you on the actual numbers. I can come back to you on the case above 10,000 as well in the town centre, but I couldn't tell you what the process is or whether there's how many there are above those levels or with high arrears. I do know that K&H will obviously take all reasonable steps to try and recover the money and use all the powers that are available for every case. So that's all I could really say.
Thank you.
And I think Councillor Richards, Mark has mentioned when he's reported to this committee previously that if bad debt's been written off, but someone then comes back and we're aware of a way that we can recover it, the team do take steps to try and do that. It's not that it's gone forever once it's written off. If there is an opportunity to get it back, I know that the team do what they can to try and achieve that.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no worries, thank you. Does anyone else have any further comments or questions on the reports? No? Right then,
Yep.
Thank you very much, Steve. Oh no, sorry, it's up, Martin.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just referring on page 15, the breakdown by directorates. Obviously, finance has the largest share of write-offs because that would deal with council tax and other things. But then looking at sort of other directorates, economy and skills amount is far higher in percentage terms than other services. Is there a reason for that?
In terms of the finance one, I can answer that straight away. That's to do with housing benefit overpayments that is included in the finance line. So by definition, they're the most vulnerable group we tend to have, and I think that is covered in point 2.5 of the report. So that's that one. In terms of the economies and skills, 2.99, I'm not sure what the additional write-off is. I mean, there's a bit more detail in it for the types of write-off underneath in the table below, which breaks it down by type of write-off. But I would need to have a look in more detail as to what the actual write-offs were. The only high-level data is the one in the second part of the table.
If you'd be able to circulate that and any other additional information after the committee was all
I can do that.
That'd be appreciated, just to make sure all committee members have heard back. Councillor Smage.
Yes, thanks. Just in relation to the question about visibility to cabinet members. So in 1415, there is a report that states that under financial procedure rules, a report must be given detailing debts written off under the delegated authority, prepared and formally noted by the director in consultation with the cabinet member, and the director of resources has to prepare an annual consolidated report of all debts written off for consideration by cabinet and the corporate governance and audit committee. I'm just wanting to double check in relation to the question that was raised about it not going to cabinet. So have the delegations been changed since 1415 in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. Does Eamon or Julie want to respond to that, please?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Smage, are you referring to a report you saw in 2014-15, or is it when you mentioned 14-15? What?
Yeah, I'm referring to a report that's actually on the council's website under decisions.
In 14-15. Yeah, the financial procedure rules have changed since then for that. So for the officer delegation and report to corporate governance and audit committee. If it would help, as we're changing some of the typos and just sort of reflecting back on Councillor Bolt's comment, it'd be useful perhaps if we state up front at the start of the report in terms of referring explicitly to the relevant financial procedure rules, so that gives you the content, the rationale and reason for it coming to corporate governance and audit committee. So we'll make sure that we'll incorporate that for future reference as well.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's always come to corporate governance and audit, hasn't it? But I think the query was about the cabinet and the delegations.
We'll make sure that clarification's up front in the report.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor and Councillor Richards still have their hands up. I'll just check whether that's new or no, not for John and not for Sue. All right. Any sort of final comments or questions? Anyone for the report? No. Right. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Steve, for joining us today. And as John said in the initial comments, do pass our thanks on to the team for what is a really good performance demonstrated in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Bye. Right. Just before we move on to item 8, as it refers to that's the informing the audit risk assessment for Kirklees. I just wanted to mention or re-mention what I circulated in an email to you all, which is that there's going to be a webinar. There's one on 28th of September, which was included in my email, which is a SIPFA seminar on the Redmond review. Some officers are attending that, but there is a fee, and it's going to be, I think it'll be quite in depth. It's 3 hours. So if anyone wants to attend that, please do inform Lee. I'll be going to the LGA one, which was also included in the email, on the 7th of October, which is 11 o'clock till 12:30. And I think that'll be really helpful and informative for us. So if members are available to attend, I would encourage you to do so. The details are all in my email. I can circulate again if anyone needs it. But I will hand over now to to James for item 8.
Hi, Chair. Thank you for that. Can you all see me and hear me? Great. So yes, and thank you also for that timely reminder of the Redmond review. I'm sure everyone will enjoy that if they can attend, and hopefully you all can. Just in terms of this report, it's a short covering report supporting the 2 appendices that are attached. Council's external auditor, Grant Thornton, asked council officers complete the Appendix A, which is the first one, and also asked the chair of Audit Committee did likewise for Appendix B. In terms of the content, it's just set down in a few basic areas. So it covers financial reporting and changes for 1920, internal control, fraud and ethics, laws and regs, the presumption of going concern, related parties, litigation and claims, and various other accounting areas, including the use of estimates. Just to let you know, external audit uses assurance letters to support their overall opinion on the auditor's statement of accounts and the annual governance statement. As previously mentioned, we're hoping to bring the auditor's accounts to this committee for approval on 24th of November. And external audit, I think, are updating later on the agenda on their progress so far. So yes, I think it's the sort of the recommendation is just that you sort of agree the documents and happy for them to be formally submitted to Grant Thornton. So yes, any questions? Happy to take them.
Members, are there any questions or comments?
Agree the report, Chair.
John Roberts, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. Just to, I think this looks like it's going to be not contentious issues, so that's good. The big piece which we really ask you to think about is the compliance with laws and regulations. Are there any things at this stage in your awareness we need to consider? The other piece that's done quite around at the minute is around going concern and what auditors are looking for from going concern in a local authority context. And local authorities, by their statutory nature, will always be going concerns and will prepare their accounts on a going concern basis. What we're looking for, and where we will come onto this in the sort of post-COVID world as well, is evidence of your ability to meet your financial challenges over the year ahead. Really, the period is looking at from one audit opinion to the next. So we look forward from, if we're assuming we give the audit opinion in November of 2020, we're looking forward to November 2021 for assurances of your ability to meet your financial challenges, accepting the fact that you are statutory going concern. And that's covered by this letter, and we will go more onto that in the sort of the audit update around COVID as well.
Thank you, John. Councillor Taylor.
Just going to comment on John's comments there about going concern. I know we have through, I'm trying to remember which committees this have been through corporate scrutiny, I think it was, or it may have been this committee, or it may have been both. We did earlier in the year have an update on the financial position, bearing in mind the impact of COVID and what we were looking at in terms of the potential impact of COVID financially. And in the early days, there was some noise and comments made by, I think, by Councillor Turner actually, that indicated that there was a significant gap. However, when I raised that with the chief executive and the leader, I was given very strong assurances that they were entirely comfortable that this year and next year we had been pretty robust in terms of our reserves position, and been were confident that we would be able to get through that. So I think my take on John's comments would be that we are comfortable and we should be in a robust position to meet our financial responsibilities in the next 12-18 months.
Yeah, thank you, John. From my understanding of my discussions with Councillor Turner, I do know what you're referring to. He's, as you say, confident. We are confident we'll do that this year. Councillor Turner has been something he said quite a bit is that the challenges will come next year when the real economic impact hits, and obviously we're very reliant on support from government as well. So, any other comments or anything to add, colleagues? No. If everyone's happy with that, we'll move on to the next item, which is the audit progress report and sector update from Councillor Pinnock. I think might have a hand.
Yeah, am I unmuted? Yeah,
no,
really,
we can hear you.
Yeah, really sorry. I've run my diary by the calendar appointment, which mine said 12 o'clock. I don't know why that is. It said 12 o'clock on mine when I looked in, and then I'm reading through the papers this morning and suddenly turned to the front and it says 11. So I have no idea why that. Did anybody else have that? Because I just
no, my diary, yeah, the Outlook appointment was 11 o'clock on the diary.
No, on the Teams appointment. When you click and then it goes into your diary. Mine definitely says 12. So anyway, so apologies for that. And
no worries, Kath. We can forgive you for that.
Yeah, so I'm really sorry. So I hate being late. And just Paola Davis has asked me to give her apologies because she's got another council meeting that's clashing.
Yeah, we've noted. Paola got in touch directly as well, so we know. Yeah,
right,
we've noted.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Kath.
Right. Yeah. So really sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You've missed the annual bad debt write-offs report.
Oh right. Okay. Right.
Joined us for the Grant Thornton. Are about to give their progress report and sector update. So I'll pass over to Grant Thornton.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The Redmond review you mentioned is probably the biggest and the most topical piece, and it actually was published after this paper was drafted. So it's fresh off the press. The webinar, the SIPFA webinar next week, I'm speaking at. I've led for Grant Thornton with the review, and met with Sir Tony several times, and I'm funnily enough meeting with him at 12 o'clock today as well. So my offer to the committee would be I'm more than happy to come and do a training session or a feedback session on that as a bespoke workshop. Should you think that's a good use of your time as members? That's the Redmond review. The document that you've got presented with you. So I'm going to hand over to Stephen now, who's going to update you with progress. Just from me is the COVID context, really, that we are continuing to run our portfolio of audits remotely. That is working. We are giving audit opinions. We've given a number of audit opinions at local authorities, and we've certainly been able to do them for our NHS audit portfolio earlier in the year. The technology allows secure audit transfer of information, and it allows the meetings such as this to take place. It does take longer, and that's been allowed for within the reporting timescales and the Secretary of State's extension of those reporting scales to November, and Stephen will update you on where we're at in terms of that. The key levels from an audit perspective around risk are around certain areas of valuation, whether that's property valuation, particularly any commercial investments are affected by the uncertainties inherent around COVID. Pensions assets is another key area, but for me it's the area where the public I think are the most interested in is that future financial challenge and your resilience in being able to be secure in these very uncertain times as we head to further possible restrictions on movement, etc. Over the next 6 months or so. That's all I wanted to say. Stephen, could I bring you in just to update on where we're at now, because the audit has been underway for a while, and we are making good progress, I believe.
Yeah. No, thanks, John. Yes. Yeah, so I mean, the key message really is that, yeah, the 1920 audit, it is underway, and we've got a team delivering the work now over the next 2 months in accordance with the audit plan that you received at the last committee. I was going to briefly mention COVID as well on page 36 of the pack. But we are working remotely as an audit team, but we are able to make the most of the technology that's available, and we've had plenty of experience with that now, as John just mentioned. We received the draft accounts, and they were provided just in advance of the deadline, which was great. And the working papers are coming through to us regularly as well. We've got some audit software that is used by the council to upload those working papers, and that's working smoothly. But like John said, remote working does take a little bit longer, but when we're working through it, and and it's working okay for us at the moment. We have regular weekly update meetings with Rachel and the finance team. So I can give you the assurance that everything's on track and it's where we'd expect it to be. Page 37 of the report, that talks about the grant certification work as well. So we're running that alongside the year-end audit. So that's particularly the housing benefits certification and the teachers' pensions. Page 38 of the report, that sets out the audit deliverables, and like John just mentioned, the findings report and the opinion due by the extended deadline of the 30th of November, but we're on track for that at the moment. I didn't want to say, it's still relatively early in the process really, to give you a more detailed update on where we are with the individual jobs, but I can give you the assurance that we're working through them at the moment, and making as good a progress as we would expect at this time of the audit. But more than happy to take any detailed questions on the work if members have got any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, John Roberts, for your offer of doing a training session for us. That's certainly, I hope members will agree with me. I think that's certainly something we'll want to take up. I think that'd be really, really helpful and interesting for us. So if we can, after this meeting, try to arrange that at a mutual convenience, I think that'd be great. Thank you very much. Before I hand over to members, I'd just like to ask a quick question. It's not necessarily to do with the contents of the report itself. It's someone's got a call.
Yeah.
Stick yourself on mute, please, Steve. Sorry about that, everyone. I did a training session with SIPFA recently, and I'm aware that they're very keen on audit committees having independent members, and I know that's something that the Redmond Review mentions, but I don't believe it yet. The suggestion is whether or not that's going to be something that's required or just something that's recommended. I was just wondering what Grant Thornton's view as our external auditor was of committees having independent members, and whether that gives you any greater assurance or not.
I think it helps. It helps to bring an insight. It depends on the composition of the particular committee and how that committee works in practice. But quite a number of the audit committees I work with do have independent members, and I would say it's more positive than negative. You know, they bring in a sort of an external perspective, particularly if you've got someone from a governance and assurance background, where maybe the audit committee might not have those sort of skills, but have more than sort of political skills. Whereas bringing someone in to sort of ask the more maybe technical audit-related questions can be of value. I think like everything in Redmond, what Redmond says is his recommendations and his proposals doesn't mean to say that those will be actually carried forward and adopted. But I would say it's a good thing on balance. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions or comments? I believe Councillor Pinnock's hand is up, but I don't know whether that's from earlier or from a comment now.
That's because I've not taken it down. Sorry.
You're not the first to fall foul of that in this meeting. Don't worry, Councillor Pinnock. Members, any comments or questions for our external auditors? No, right. Well, thank you very much, both of you. Councillor Lee Richards, is your hand up?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, do you have any comments on the two scenarios that you included in the pack on pages 50 and 51 about how a second wave may affect the council and its going forward and its finances, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Bloody thing.
Not at specific level of this council and Kirklees. It's the uncertainty that we're all living through at the moment, certainly. So what we would be looking for is, in terms of you responding to those future financial challenges, whether you do it formally or whether you do it informally, remodeling of your MTFS, remodeling of your treasury management strategy to deal with those sort of different issues, and scenario plan and scenario plan and contingency plan based on the various different sort of cases of downside risk and upside risk, but probably more on the downside as we go forward.
Thank you very much. Eamon, did you want to come in on that, please?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to follow on from John, really, we'll certainly pick it up. The Emerging Budget Strategy Update Report is going to Cabinet on 20th of October and Council on 21st of October, and I quite like the diagrams. They kind of neatly set out potential chronologies, and we'll have all of that in view, accepting that these are uncertain times, and you can sensitivity analysis, analyze and scenario model quite extensively on this. But I'll just chuck into the frame. There's more known unknowns at the moment than you can shake a stick at, which makes the financial planning framework probably more challenging than it has done in previous years. But we're certainly up for the challenge, and we'll reflect that in terms of emerging budget proposals as well.
Yeah, thank you, Eamon. And if anyone's got known unknowns and uncertainty on their Eamon bingo cards, I think you've just got a line. Councillor Pinnock.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. What strikes me is that the role of this committee is going to be quite important, given all the uncertainties in financial planning. And I just wonder what Grant Thornton would think about how we approach the new, this new sort of reality of, significant financial uncertainty for the council, and the sort of threats of Section 114 issuances from a number of councils, and how we as a committee can properly help the council through this uncertain financial period.
And this is this is all forming, and as Eamon said, we none of us have ever dealt with situations this uncertain before. The audit this year and the sort of the impact of COVID, we have to bear in mind that whilst we are looking forward from a sort of a financial resilience perspective, most of the audit this year is anchored on the arrangements that were in place at the 31st of March. So it's more an issue for next year's audit, but we can bring forward audit work to do that. And what we are doing now in anticipation of that is talking with our specialists, our advisory colleagues who are dealing with a number of councils who are getting into more financial distress and so on, about early warning indicators, about how the sort of the arrangements need to be established, what our expectation is on what sort of essential practice is. So that's all it at the sort of the development stage and preparation for early work for next year. So yes, it's point well made. I haven't got an answer for you today, but we're very much on that sort of same page as well.
Right. I just wonder, Chair, whether we ought to be thinking about additional meetings of this committee. That's one of the thoughts I'd had. If we, because there are going to be so many changes, because we're not sure where the council's going, whether or not we need to meet more often in order to support the council actually through this really difficult time. That's just, I don't know if that's the right answer to the question or one of the right answers to the question, but I'm sure it's something we ought to be considering.
Yeah, I think it's about whether we as a committee think we're seeing enough to get enough assurance that things are going right. Obviously, we've also got corporate scrutiny committee who will see, which John and I also sit on, will see a lot of the financial stuff. But if there's, I think it's something we could review if you'd like to as we're going forward, obviously with the Redmond review and John offering to do a training session for us. There are, as you say, there are going to be changes, so it's something we can consider if you like. Whether it's the answer at the moment, I don't know.
No, neither do I.
If the majority of the committee think we're not seeing enough to get enough assurance, I'm sure we'd certainly want to call things in to make sure that we do get that. Councillor Taylor, you're on mute, John.
Sorry. I suppose my view on this would be that we need to be careful that we don't start putting extra burdens on the very team that we're relying on to understand and help us navigate through this by asking for more reports and more meetings. And just wonder whether an alternative might be to suggest to other members of this committee that they would be welcome to observe and attend corporate scrutiny meetings where we do have the opportunity to look in a bit more detail at some of the financial stuff, rather than duplicating the workload for some of the officers. Just it's achieving the same objective, but perhaps doing it in a slightly different way without increasing the meeting volumes.
Yeah, we do need to avoid duplication, as you say. We don't want to be creating an unnecessary burden or having officers doing duplicate work where it's otherwise going to the scrutiny committee. But given how much change is going on with all of the reviews at the minute, I'm sure we can consider it going forward, Kath.
I do think we need to be separate from scrutiny. I'm sorry to say, that we have a separate role from scrutiny, and whether or not there's a joint session where we have the information, that's one thing, but we have a separate responsibility. I'll leave it there. I've just raised it. That's up to you to us all to think about it.
Yeah, I'd just say, Kath, in future, if there are any things that you think that aren't coming to committee that you'd like to that give us more assurance, please do get in touch with me directly, and we can look at that. Do any other members have any questions or comments on this particular item? No. Well, thank you very much to both of you for joining us at this meeting, and in particular for offering to do some training with us, John. I'm sure that's something I'd like us to arrange after this meeting at a mutual convenience. Thank you very much. Item 10 is the Corporate Customer Standards Annual Report 2019-20. I think that's Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, just to go through the report and just to summarise what the report is about, it's just really an update for 2019-20 on third stage complaints, which are ones that haven't been resolved by service, and also with the Ombudsman. There's a slightly reduced report this year for folks that listen to me every year. I've not included any sort of any specific learning points at the moment. I intend to do that at the interim report that I'll be doing in sort of like due course in a few months' time. So really, it's just sort of showing our place in the world. There's quite a lot of stats there. And actually, it's a fairly positive story in terms that our numbers are consistent, in terms of the number of complaints coming through, the numbers being held by the Ombudsman, and that kind of stuff. And we've got a slightly improved position in Kirklees in an environment where nationally, actually, it was a slightly decreasing performance by councils across the country. So when you look at West Yorkshire, we're about 19% of the population, and what we're getting through is rather less than that in terms of proportion of complaints that are Kirklees in West Yorkshire. So we're doing slightly better than we might expect, really, for West Yorkshire. I'm detailing the actual upheld cases by the Ombudsman. That's in one of the appendices, and also in the appendices are the whistleblowing cases that we've received in year. There is an uplift in the number of whistleblowing inquiries that we've received this year, and that's partly, I think, because of improved reporting mechanisms. It's quite difficult with whistleblowing because people might go to HR and make an HR complaint, and they can sort of cross over into whistleblowing. So there is a transference of cases through there. The report also just goes into a little bit of analysis of the changes and the pressures that we've encountered over the last year, and I'll move on to 2021 while I do this little bit. So we have had increasing numbers of queries, I suppose, about unconscious bias and concerns about unconscious bias, and of course that the Black Lives Matters protests have pulled that through into this year more. So we're getting quite a few queries about sort of like whether the way we've considered individual complaints is because of some sort of unconscious bias. That kind of requires quite a lot of investigation, because as well as looking at the individual case, you're then also comparing it against other cases that are coming through, so that you can demonstrate or not that they've been dealt with fairly and equally. And it's completely right that we're open to challenge, and it's a useful piece of work, but obviously it just takes the increasing length of time just to sort of to offer that assurance and to check all those through. The other thing that we've been working on a little bit is restorative as well. The council wants to be a restorative council, and looking from a complaints perspective, I very much see it as drawing it all back to good old customer service standards. It's about actually sitting down, speaking with the residents, understanding what their complaint is, having empathy with them, and then going through and explaining what it is that we can offer in terms of legislation and policy and process. So it's actually, again, it's a good step forward to working through, but obviously it will take the time to work through, and I think as well is an issue. Restorative should be done at the earliest possible process. So in effect, if it gets to me, it's kind of too late. I need to work with complaints managers through the council basically at an earlier stage. So there's quite a lot of work to be done there. I think it's just worth sort of touching a little bit on 2021, because obviously it's been an exceptional period, really. The Ombudsman closed down for about 3 months in the early days of COVID, so that's led to some pent-up demand in inquiries. So we are exceptionally busy at the moment with sort of cases that people have held on to for 3 months. I think when we get to year end, we'll probably find a lower number of complaints overall, because obviously people have different things to worry about, and the moment has passed for them to complain if they had a complaint in the middle of the COVID situation and that sort of stuff. So I think the overall numbers are likely to reduce, but we are getting a sort of head of work at the moment. So we are very busy at the minute. And I think in terms of also identified no particular trends coming through as a result of COVID. I know it was something that Councillor Simpson asked as part of our pre-meeting, and I haven't particularly identified anything. I say we're just getting the usual range of complaints, really. There is perhaps just a few comments about the changes in our working procedures, the fact that we're not face-to-face with people, that people can't present to committee in the normal way, and that sort of stuff, which I think everybody is probably aware of anyway. So there's a few of those sort of comments coming through, but that's really everything that I've got. So thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. If I can make comments before I bring Councillor Taylor and any other members, I'd just like to say it is a really good, satisfying report. I'm really pleased to see it. Thank you. The comparative performance with West Yorkshire authorities, not that we're competitive, but it is really really pleasing. And it's particularly when we consider, as you mentioned, the Ombudsman, that other complaints procedures in other agencies were being suspended, that our team were continuing to deal with them, as well as knowing that you, Chris, were also helping the team who were doing the business rates grants, as well as your regular work. I think your team have done an exceptional job. So thank you very much. And also the work that you're doing on the restorative stuff is really, really good and really interesting. And I'm looking forward to receiving an update on that. As you said, lots of work to do, but I'm looking forward to an update on that in the future. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I would just echo most of those comments that Will made, other than I am absolutely competitive. You might not be, but some of us are. And again, performing my proofreading role. Just on page 6 of the report, Chris, the paragraph about special education needs, that first line says reviews how that represent should be they.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
And people would be disappointed if I didn't, do my job properly. My one question, to be honest, really was around one of the ombudsman cases that's summarised in Appendix 2. And on mine, it's the first one on page 11, which ends in 7883, the Education and Children's Services. And it just says that the Ombudsman finds the appeals panel acted with fault. And I was just wondering if you're able to just expand on that at all. If you're not, and you don't have the detail, I understand. But it just worried me a bit that the Ombudsman considered that we'd conducted an appeal and we'd done it incorrectly, is what it seemed to be inferring. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Chris?
I think it was a case where it's about record keeping and demonstrating that we've done it properly. So I seem to recall, I will double check to make sure, but I think that was the case. And what we have is a sort of tick list of process that you have to go through. So it's kind of, have you done that? Have you done that? Have you done that? And the officers that administer it should sort of put a big tick next to it all to demonstrate that it's being talked about, because there's certain things that aren't covered in any great depth, depending on the nature of nature of the appeal. But there is a process that they need to go through, and I seem to remember that was the error. But I will double check, and I'll return to you, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, it's just because if you read the narrative, it says that we did everything correctly, and then it says, but they found that it acted with fault. And it just, just kind of just didn't read as though that made sense. But anyway, thank you for that.
No, that's fine. I would just point out as well that the narrative that I've put in is actually what the Ombudsman's published. So it's not my wording actually. So yes. So that's the only thing I could say about that. But I will double check. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Chris. Do any other members have any questions or comments with regards to the report? Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Appendix 4, the whistleblowing cases.
Yeah.
Page 69 of the report, one which is a concern, that somebody working on attended the planning committee in a professional capacity, and also in the same meeting spoke in a private capacity. It seems very strange. I know, obviously, if elected members overstep any boundaries, the people are quick to appoint standards committees at us. I mean, surely council staff know to differentiate as well and to avoid any inference. It's the man on the Clapham omnibus. We have enough staff that surely if one has a personal interest in a case, they step aside and a colleague either presents it or whatever at planning. Planning is something which residents struggle with at many times. So we need to make sure that it is operating as efficiently and transparently as possible.
Yes.
Chris, can you? Sorry, Chris. Can you go on?
Sorry. Yeah. Yes, I would agree with you, Councillor Bolt. I think the situation is slightly different in terms of members, because members are always sort of fully aware of their responsibilities and the roles, and that's spelt out very well. I think in this case, the officer didn't actually sort of fully clock that just because they were supporting the process earlier on at the committee that then they stood up and spoke about a case that was going to be perceived as a conflict of interest. So I think it was a naivety as much as anything, and in terms of the actual comments and the way that the officer behaved, there was no no issues found at all. But it was really how it looked, and I accept entirely what you say there.
Thank you very much, Chris. Any further comments or questions, members? Right. Thank you very much, everyone. I believe that concludes our meeting. Yes, and thank you very much, Chris. Can reiterate the thanks for the really positive report. Thanks to you and the team. And on that, I believe that concludes our meeting, members. So thank you very much for joining us. It's nice to see you all, and I'm sure I'll see you all again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.